All is quiet on New Year's Day. A world in white gets underway. I want to be with you night and day. Nothing changes on New Year's Day. This is the Community Solutions Podcast, coming at you 2018, Season 2 of what we anticipate to be a very, very interesting year. I am Jason Bradley. Andrew Richter.
Yeah, very busy as we do nothing but get busier. And once again, you have me stumped on the opening.
That's you too, baby.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That should have been a softball. Well,
I don't know. Right. I'm trying to think of U2 songs. I know them, but if I hear them,
you'd know it if you heard this one.
Who's the lead? Sting? He in that? Sting?
No, that was the Police.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
That was a joke. That was a joke.
I
could have said Stevie Nicks or something.
Stevie Wonder. Yeah. There's a bet. We should get Stevie Nicks and Stevie Wonder and Stevie Winwood all together, and they could... Never mind.
I like Steve Winwood.
Yeah,
I do very much.
Yeah, that's good. Good stuff.
I agree.
It is a brand new year, and we were just talking about it's going to be a busy year. Wow. I mean, here we are back in an election year. These election years, I mean, I enjoy the off years a little bit. Why? Because we get to work hard, and it's not always campaign related, but it's more... It's kind of level setting for our business. It's getting a sense of where things are at, where we've come out of, where we're going into. So I kind of appreciate that break, but also there's something about just the speed of an election year. It's getting on your uniform. It's picking up your bat.
Well, keep in mind. I mean, things start off really quick during the year.
Yeah,
we're a month from caucus. Okay,
uh-huh.
We are. If you're involved in your local BPOU, your convention is probably have a window of March or so. State convention, at least for the Republicans, is the first weekend of June. I don't know when the DFL one is. I haven't heard.
Yeah.
Or any other party for that matter. I mean, it doesn't matter. Participate in the process is what matters. The CD conventions will be in April. I mean, we'll be off and running. There's a primary in August. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
People complain about election season being so long, but I mean, the reality is getting your name out there, raising money. There is no off season.
Right.
This isn't the baseball season where somebody goes and lives in Arizona for 4 months before they get up for spring training.
Right.
This is, it's not like that in politics. So you have to have that year-round mentality. It's a mentality that some people get sick of, but I think it's necessary. Whoever your adversary is, you have to assume they're not sitting on their hind end, and you can't be doing it either.
Right, yeah, this is almost more like the NBA, where in the off-season we go play in the European League, and, it's...
Well, this NBA season ends, July 4th?
Right.
This starting earlier, too, it seems like, anyway.
It seems that way.
I don't know if that's right, but it seems like they start earlier than
So, but I mean, this is exciting, because as much as we love to play the game in the odd year, and I love that odd year game, I also relish the even year game. It's just when the even year is done, how tired have we been in the past? Just that next day after the election. Although in my mind, I'm like, I'm ready to go. Let's go. Let's start.
I am, but there is an old saying.
Yeah,
you got to recharge your batteries a little bit. There has to be. There's no off season, but there are off days, and I think that once an election happens, there has to be a little bit of there's a reason that nobody takes office until January.
Right.
So there's that we call it a lame duck period, but there's that transition period that happens. That you cool down after the election, then the reality hits that the people who won have to govern, the people who lost have to go back to whatever they were doing previous, and there's that chance to recover and get ready to start the grind again. That will start right away, and it's January 3rd for Congress, January 20th for the president. It's, I believe, January 5th is Inauguration Day in Minnesota.
I think so.
For a governor, which will have a new one in a year. Don't know who that is, but we will have a new one. We'll have now 2 Senate races. We'll have a legislative session that will begin in January of 2019. And, of course, your first meeting in January, whatever day that is, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, whatever, is when council people, whether they're elected or reelected, will be sworn in for another term.
Right. And by then you'll have gone to your training over at the League of Minnesota Cities so they can teach you the wrong way to do everything. And, I'm just going to throw this out there. This year, I'm going to propose that we do a training. If you're newly elected this year in 2018 and you want to learn about the way things really work and you want to learn about how to have smaller government at the local level, we're going to do a training.
And I would say this, too. You don't have to be newly elected either.
No.
You can be reelected. You can be a current council member. If you want some advice on what to do, how to get something on the agenda, how to maybe get a majority in the next time around.
At 2018, you guys are going to have to start handing in your comprehensive plans. How would you like to learn about maybe some ways? I know you're going through the processes to get those, started this year, but new batch of people coming in, you might want to put the brakes on and you might want to do something different.
Keep in mind they can always be amended too.
Yeah.
That's another avenue. And a comprehensive plan is supposed to be a guide, not a Bible.
Right.
So always keep that perspective in mind.
Yes. So anyways, we're going to, at some point late this year, I think, do some training with newly elected people. Because,
won't that be fun?
Well, and we know, today we're going to be talking a little bit about our hometown, but and this will be good for all of you to hear because a lot of cities are now coming and starting to ask Crystal, wow, what did you do there? Because they're starting to notice that this city is standing up and innovating, not just following the pack. And Crystal, when these folks came into office, I don't think they would mind me saying this. I mean, they were a little blindsided. It was like, wow, I didn't know what I didn't know, and I wish I had known more. So around, training newly elected people, or if you've been there a while and you just want a little different view of things, it'll be valuable because you come into office and you really don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's why the subject matter that we're talking about today is so important because this is one of the new ideas that happened in Crystal. And I'm still, I don't know what it is about me. I don't know why I can't completely be an optimist here. I just think this will be slow to happen in other areas, but I do think other areas are going to start doing this anyway, what we're about to talk about. But cities are copycats, and they... new thoughts in government don't, I don't know how to put this diplomatically, but
well,
they don't happen very often. It's usually, Brooklyn Park's doing this or New Hope's doing this, or I went to a convention that the American Planning Association put on, and here's the trends. That's typically how things happen in how those things go on is that one city does not have a new idea. They're simply taking what somebody else is doing.
Yeah.
So if you're the city doing the innovating, okay, then you can affect positive change somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, and that's the whole point of this is not only to create a culture where we've got people doing the right thing, but that it rubs off on the areas around them because they see that it's a better way. We win either way. We don't just have to elect new city councils. If we are electing people that do the right thing and it rubs off on the cities around them, we win as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, you have cities that take the initiative, and you have cities that wait for a problem to be given to them.
Right.
And so that's another part of the mentality that has to be different.
Absolutely. So today, I mean, we're going to talk about Crystal, but this is something that if you can get this to happen in your city, whether you can convince your city council to do it, whether you can run for city council and implement it, whether you work in a city as a staff member and you want to try and get something like this implemented there, we're going to talk about the laws that are made in a city, the city code. The city code in Crystal was huge, wasn't it, Andrew?
I mean, I think it was very, very large. I'm not even sure I can put it into perspective how large the city code was.
Well, how many were there? How many ordinances?
I believe 14,000.
14,000 in a city of 23,000.
Yeah, with 13,000 eligible voters.
With 13,000 eligible voters. So, yeah, that's about one per eligible voter. So
a little more laws than people, yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and the city code is still large.
Yes.
I mean, it's not a small document. Some things are necessary to be in there. Mm-hmm. Some things aren't. Some
Absolutely.
things are there for a reason, and it's hard. A city code has a lot of provisions to it.
Yes, it does.
A lot of chapters, everything from sign regulations to zoning regulations to permit requirements and conditional use permits, and you name it, it's there.
Absolutely. And even, there's distinctions. If you have a charter city, which means you have your own charter, like a city constitution, or you're a statutory city where you just let the state of Minnesota figure it out for you, you can make your own judgment who wins in that scenario.
True. You still have to write your own code.
You still have to write your own code, but it's going to differ a little bit. Both cities will have, your general provisions, ordinances around the city council, around the administration of city government, but that's, they're going to vary. Where they start to get a lot more the same and people are copying verbatim, you're going to get into your building, housing, and construction regulations, planning and land use regulations, public health, public utilities, streets, alleys, and public ways, public safety, like you said, licenses and permits, business and trade regulations, the sale, consumption, display of liquor and beer, traffic, motor vehicles and other vehicles, and misdemeanors. There are some other variances that you'll find, but in Crystal, those are the sections of the city code, and you will see those reflected in a lot of cities.
You will, and there are some state laws that make that happen too. Yep. There are some things a city is required to do, especially if you're not a charter city where it's not spelled out there. It will be spelled out in city code. They have to have some. I'm not sure if that's state law. I'm pretty sure it is, though, that they have to have their laws written out somewhere.
Yes.
In the city code. Now, I remember seeing that code at first and thinking what a monstrosity it was. I mean, you want to talk about, you want to talk about a document that nobody knows anything about, really.
Yeah.
Pull out the city code. Ask the city councilman what's in that code. Yeah. City staff, even. There's so many, you can't expect them to.
No, they have to go look it up usually.
Yeah.
What's the largest size sign you can have if you're a sole proprietor working out of your home?
It depends.
It depends, yeah.
It depends.
What's the setback on the sign?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, what's the permit requirement? How long does that last? I mean, there's endless amounts of things that are in a city code. A lot of them aren't enforced.
Right.
Some of them are only enforced if you get a complaint.
Yes.
Which is it leads to unequal enforcement of that.
It does. And I have my own solution to that. Maybe we can talk about that later. But
sure. I mean, we certainly can. So the city code was kind of something I know in the back of my mind and the back of your mind.
Yeah.
That was kind of a long-term thing that needs to be looked at, reviewed, clapped down, and changed.
We used to say, when we would go around and talk, doing keynotes and stuff, that what somebody really needs to do is take a pen and go through the city code and just start crossing stuff out. Do you remember that?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, that's what we used to say.
Here's the great thing. I actually got to do it. That's the fun thing.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to talk about a little today. The city of Crystal, after getting the majority of new blood coming in that wanted to see more freedom, less dictatorial control, created what was called the City Code Task Force. Now, Andrew got to be a part of that, and he's going to tell you some about his experiences on that. But it was an opportunity for citizens, residents of Crystal, to get put onto a task force to talk about the city code and to say, I don't like this, this is outdated, this is a bad law, whatever. And by the end, I mean, they turned in their report to the city council, who is now going through it, with the city attorney, things like that, to figure out what they can do. And they are actually starting to get rid of a lot of those ordinances. So we're going to tell you that story. That's the story in a nutshell, but we're going to expound upon it. So, Andrew, what was it like? I mean, when this thing first started? Because, I mean, you had a pretty good knowledge of the ordinances. I mean, the size of it, maybe not the scope of it, because I know you and I have both sat down a couple of times and read through different sections of the city code, but still, we hadn't read through the whole thing.
Yeah, I had not read the whole thing. I had skimmed the whole thing cover to cover, maybe not specifically every page, but what it was like, basically, the city had the idea to put together this task force, and they asked for volunteers throughout the community.
Yeah.
Originally, there were going to be 10. 14 people applied, and the city had a hard time narrowing it down, so they just decided to keep everybody. All 14 of us. Now, we lost a couple people along the way, including me, because I moved.
Right.
This was in the spring of 2015. So the task force gets put together. We meet at first with Ann Norris, the city manager, and Troy Gilchrist, who was the city attorney.
Okay.
Or he was the attorney on loan from the law firm that we're contracted with. And we had one big meeting, introductory meeting, where Troy spoke most of the time, and he talked about how there were some limitations to this statutorily and charter-wise, and but nobody told us how to do it or what to tackle first or how much time we had, or I mean, the council really let this happen organically. And I have to say that I've seen task forces be created before where they were really, it was kind of like a pro wrestling match where you kind of knew the outcome.
Right.
You didn't know how they get there, but you sort of knew where it was going.
Yeah.
And task forces often get created. There's 20 people on it. Half of them are staff members and council people, and
that's a big thing.
Yeah, people already on commissions. It's really not an objective look. They're there to steer the task force in a certain direction.
Right, and great case in point is in Big Lake. They're going through their comprehensive plan task force right now, and they hired consultants to come in and pitch their ideas and have the people that are there talk about their ideas with staff in the room. And now that's changed a little bit because some people spoke up and complained, but they were definitely steering the conversation and trying to get to a desired outcome, and they would give you two false positive choices, right? And so you
do you want to be shot or hanged?
Right. Do you want the urban with transit, or do you want the suburban with bike lanes and mixed use? And it's like, No, what? I'm paraphrasing there, but it was all to get a desired outcome because the people who came in to do the consulting knew what they wanted to do.
Right, and then and if they get their way, then it looks like it was the citizens that pushed something,
right?
When it really wasn't.
Yep.
So, but that was a great thing about the council, about Mayor Adams and the council's approach to this was, we aren't going to tell them what to do. We're not going to tell them how to do it. They're going to figure it out. Now, there were some growing pains. And I should first say that I had the honor of being elected the chair of this task force.
Well, that's kind of fitting. Yeah. Although I know that there are people that would complain about that.
Well, I was surprised.
Mainly being the old council.
I was surprised. I heard almost none of that. Yeah. I mean, nobody... I don't know of anybody who complained about me being vocal.
Well, and I think it's only fitting. I mean, I hate to say this because I'm going to sound so full of ourselves, but I mean, we're the experts on this stuff.
Well, we were people who brought up this issue long before anybody was doing it, and alerted people to the fact that, I really found it out when I ran for office.
Yeah.
Because some of the things, if I think back to conversations I had with people, so-and-so isn't cutting his grass. Why aren't they being, they're violating the code. What is the code? How tall can somebody do this?
Yeah.
I want to build a shed and the city won't let me because it's more than an 8x8. Or I wanted to seal coat my driveway. The city came in and told them I had to pay them.
Right.
And I felt stupid because I didn't know a lot of the answers, and I'm guessing most of the people on the council didn't either. These things weren't being talked about. They weren't being taken up. They weren't being reviewed. The old council, I think, pre-Jim, I think had the attitude of, we're not going to do anything unless an issue comes to us.
Right.
We aren't going to take the initiative. We aren't going to look at this. We don't really care that much about it.
An ordinance is like a tax. Once it gets created, it doesn't go away. It just stays.
Right. And if you read the ordinances, you can tell it wasn't written by anybody in the city of Crystal. It was written by some shyster at the League of Minnesota Cities. They copied what was in Robbinsdale or something like that. And so there was just no desire to say, okay, is there something wrong here? Is there something preventing a business from coming here? Is there something from preventing an area or a small business to expand? Or is there something infringing on somebody's property rights? There just was no... I don't want to say no one cared because that's probably the wrong way to put it. There was just no desire to go through and be proactive in changing anything.
Right.
It could have been that nobody saw a problem, although judging by the attitude of our former mayor, I'm guessing that wasn't the case.
Right.
Because she was very demeaning to the task force. I can tell you nobody on that task force voted for her. And she did her own stupidly made comments that I was offended by. And quite frankly, this task force did more work than any commission Crystal's ever put together. And if the former mayor had more than a peanut for a brain and ever attended anything, she could have volunteered to be on it.
She could have.
And
they didn't turn anybody down.
No, and but she sat on her ass and decided she would belittle the people who were on it, and it made everybody really angry there. So
right,
but that again, I think her attitude was the attitude. If city staff brings us something, we'll look at it. Otherwise, we don't. She didn't give a damn. Let's just put it that way. I don't know that she speaks for Mark Hoffman and Dave Anderson and even Joe, I'm not sure. But with her as the mayor, nothing was going to happen with us.
Right.
So the task force met, and after we did the first meeting, what we did was we decided to study chapters 1 through 3.
Yeah.
Which might not sound like much. And they were shorter. And the first meeting came along, and there was a lot to go through. I mean, you can check I should mention that the meeting minutes and audio tape of these meetings is on the Crystal City Council website under their Commission's Corner and City Code Task Force. You can see our agendas. You can see the comments we made.
Yeah.
The ideas we had for eliminating or what to look at. What we did was we just kind of went through everything in the meeting. Was long, laborious, and it was difficult. I struggled as the chair with keeping the meeting moving and not cutting people off.
Right.
And so I had, after that, I think we got to like 1.3 after 2 hours. Yeah, I mean, it was tough, though. Yeah. I mean, we were doing something totally new.
Right.
And I remember it vividly because that first meeting was the Thursday before the Frolics. And so that weekend, while I was working at the VFW tent, flipping burgers, I ran into some people. Through the week, I ran into Jeff Kolb because Jeff had come to the meeting to watch as a councilman.
Yeah.
And I ran into a few people from the task force, and I'm like, boy, are we ever going to get through this? I mean, how gray is my facial hair right now? I mean, it was to the point where I had a conference call with Ann and Troy to see what we could do and we put our heads together, and what we came up with, I think this worked really well. Mm-hmm. We came up with, if you wanted to change something, is your comment. There were a lot of clerical errors. There were a lot of, this is repetitive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, this is wordy, and why is it not in English? And I read it and I don't get it. Can we make a quick change here?
Right.
So what we did was we put that in one section. I don't want to call it a consent agenda because that makes it sound like we didn't debate it. But we tried to separate the minutia, the tough stuff, from the, okay, look, this is already in the code here, let's just strike it. This is already, so we'd come to it, we'd say, okay, here are the, we had a term for it and I don't remember it, but it was, we treated it kind of like a consent agenda.
Okay.
Everybody looked it over and is there anything anybody wants to pull out? Anything anybody doesn't agree with? Anything blah, blah, blah. And so we would pass that in one motion.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to look up the term because it's going to bother me. But it was sort of like a consent agenda is the editorial and clarifying comments. That's what we call it.
Okay.
So, if a subdivision wasn't necessary or so it was a quick strike. And then we had what we called substantive comments.
Okay.
Like, okay, I don't think this is needed in the city. This maximum, this parking lot maximum is not needed, and here's why. And it was a debate.
Good.
And then we would make a recommendation by vote. It was not always unanimous. I can say I was a dissenting vote a few times. I tried to push for a few things that didn't get through.
Yeah.
I could think of a couple off the top of my head. One of the big ones was I don't like the liaison to the commissions.
Yeah.
I thought that role either needed definition or needed to go. Okay. We eliminated a lot of stuff with the Human Rights Commission, which might have been part of why that commission went away.
Yeah.
But our point was that they were not doing what the code said that they should be doing.
Interesting.
The code specified what the Human Rights Commission was supposed to do. The city council wasn't enforcing it, especially the old council. They were letting the HRC do whatever they wanted.
Huh.
And so the point was, okay, let's either... But I think it had a little bit to do maybe with why that commission's no longer there.
Well, they always had a pretty tough time fielding a full...
Yes, that commission was
slate.
Always... but I think the reason was that they weren't getting direction from the city council.
Okay.
And I don't mean telling them what the outcome should be. I mean, okay, here are the 5 issues we want you to look at and recommend a solution.
Right.
They were getting no direction. Well, what are you going to do this year?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that was the conversation.
Have a public meeting on
I mean,
why genocide is causing pollution or
whatever.
it was,
I mean, they were searching for things to do.
Yeah.
But I think the city council was in process of rethinking that anyhow. I think our comments probably pushed that along. I'll admit I was one of the ones with that. I never understood what the HRC did. I never got it. I still don't get it. I still don't understand what their role was or why it was important. Human
what
rights.
happened to the library? Sorry. Inside joke. You got to go back 2 podcasts and listen to that one. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, there were other ideas about that were bantied around, but we did. But there were things like the Planning Commission, which is required by state statute.
Yeah.
That couldn't be screwed with. Troy made that clear that's required. The wording was changed a little bit, but we could make up the membership and all that, but we decided after debating to keep it the way it was. I remember the section on signs in Crystal, the maximum height.
Yeah.
I dealt with that a little bit on the Planning Commission when we approved LED lighting in Crystal, which had not been used prior to, trying to think of the year I was on that, 2013, I want to say it was, 14 maybe, but we amended the code to do that. There were a lot of building codes that we changed, eliminated, because I felt, and I think a majority felt, that some codes could keep certain types of businesses out of the city.
Yeah.
In other words, keep empty places empty.
Yeah. Why would you want that being in a
Well,
city?
I can understand not wanting like a topless bar.
Right.
But a good, honest, small business shouldn't have to jump through hoops.
But they do.
Yeah, they still do. They still have to jump through too many as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And my favorite code, which I still don't understand, is that you couldn't have a pool table 1,000 feet from a city building, yet when Doyle's Bowling was there, the new public works building was across so the city violated their own code. So it was just kind of funny and things that, and again, there's nothing wrong with having you live in a city that we're all living pretty close together.
Right.
And there are reasons to have some maximums, some limitations, but they have to have a reasoning behind them. They have to make sense.
Right.
I don't think anybody should have a 100-foot tall garage.
Yeah.
But I don't know that 10 feet or 12 feet why is that restriction there? I mean, why is
right?
I can understand not building something so close to somebody's property line, but is 6 inches right? Is 12 inches? How do you think any of this got debated in 50 years?
Oh, no.
In the city, and so that was.
And I know, like, for a public masseuse,
massage therapist,
a massage therapist, they have to get licensed from the state, and they have to pay for their own background check and investigation from the police. Plus, they had to be licensed from the city. Now, that's a lot of money and effort for somebody to run a business out of their home, or out of a storefront. Either way.
Right, and there were other things too, like an electrician would have to come in and get a license to be bonded or something with the city when they're already licensed by the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
A plumber would have to be licensed, a tree trimmer would have to, and it's like, why are they paying? Why are we inhibiting them? Mm-hmm. If I want to do business in Brooklyn Park and Crystal and New Hope, I have to pay each one of them to do business when I'm already licensed by the state.
Right, and the city is no arbiter of what is good or bad. I mean, when I I had my sewer main break one year, and the city said, well, you can hire who you want, but here's our recommended list of plumbers. And this is before I knew anything, before I was involved. And we hired one off their list. I wonder if I should say the name.
Nah. We won't. Maybe they've gotten better since.
Maybe. But they came and they dug up the yard and they laid the new pipe and they covered it up and they did not grade the yard. In fact, they left half of a rubber tire exposed next to the fence. We had to have them come back and grade the yard. They still did not grade the yard well. I ended up having to have a friend bring a pickup load full of dirt and grade it by hand in the end of the it was terrible. I'm never going to use the city's recommendations again. Huh. And this is under the old council, again. But, this isn't a council's job to recommend. And
probably not.
City
it was
staff.
Public Works who they'd worked with.
It's who city staff worked with. And, it's ridiculous. So...
Well, yeah, and I think that a big thing that we did was ask why. Why is this rule here?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of it? I wish I could have gotten to the parking restrictions. I wasn't on it long enough to get to the overnight parking because I've always asked the question. And again, I've always had the idea because if you don't know, Crystal bans overnight parking from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. There's 21 hours where it's okay to park if it's dark or whatever, but there's 3 hours where you can't. And I've made the suggestion for a long time that we suspend it for a year or for the summer or whatever and see what happens.
Yeah.
The old council was never open to anything like that. They had their minds made up or... whatever city staff wanted, they got. And I think the new council is much more open to trying something. I don't know where that stands right now because I wasn't on there long enough. And I should mention something about the process. The city council has been taking up our proposals since about the end of 2015. I actually attended a work session, the first one that we had about it.
Okay.
It was me, Carolyn Maristani, who was the vice chair.
Okay.
Her and I attended with Ann and Troy with the council trying to explain what, because we wanted to be there if they had any questions or didn't understand something or wanted to know exactly what we were recommending. And the council has a process that they have to do this by. The charter dictates some of this, but to make changes, they have what's called a first reading, and then a second reading, and an opportunity for public input before a city code is changed.
Okay.
So the public still has chances to review that. The council gives 2 opportunities for people to come and speak, and they read it once. They may make some minor changes after that.
Okay.
And then do it a second time. They started doing this in the fall of 15, maybe October, November, December. I mean, it was somewhere around there because I remember going to that work session somewhere in that time. So they have been paralleling a little bit, always behind.
Yeah.
So it wasn't we gave them a report and now they're doing it. Excuse me, they've been doing some of it, but the council will have a work session. They may have 2. They may need a legal clarification. They may want to make a change too. Like, okay, we like this idea, but we're going to take it a step further. They may say, you know what? We appreciate the recommendation, but we're not going to go through with this part of it. So there has been some of that. The council has in no way been a rubber stamp for what we've recommended.
Right.
I should just point, they're anything but that.
Well, and they shouldn't.
And ultimately, they are the decision makers.
Yeah.
So we are an advisory task force. So I would say maybe 75% of what we've given them, they've probably adopted, at least the time I was there. Which would be through like the spring and summer of 16. I think May of 16 was the last meeting I was at. So, that is what people ought to know. Another thing people ought to know is there were some things that we brought up where we told the council you should take a look at this.
Yeah.
But we actually didn't make a recommendation. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
One of the things was about code compliance. I can't remember the issue exactly, but the issue was you comply with this code, and after a certain amount of time, every single day is considered a separate offense.
Huh.
Which I can't find anywhere in American jurisprudence that is acceptable.
No, it should not be. I mean, you violate an ordinance, you violate an ordinance.
Right. You have X amount of days to get in shape, but every single day was treated as a new violation.
That's crazy.
And I use the analogy if somebody escapes from jail and they're gone for 30 days and they're captured, they're not charged with 30 crimes, they're charged with one.
Yeah.
So I can't find anywhere in American law that allows that. Now, there's the flip side of that, which is if you want code compliance, you have to make the law strong, even if it isn't necessarily enforced like that. Because one of the things city staff came back with, well, it's there, but we don't really do that.
Yeah.
But, you get those laws into the hands of the wrong people, and you never know. Plus,
right.
I just, some people have lived next to that neighbor who just will not. What are you going to do? Kick them out of their house? I mean, you have no authority to do that. So maybe something. So what we did was we could not agree on a solution as the task force.
Okay.
The majority could not. Everybody wanted to take up the issue.
Yes.
But a third of the room wanted to leave it. A third of the room wanted to get rid of the entire thing. A third of the room wanted to reform it. Everybody thought it needed to be talked about.
Yeah.
Even the people who, I came down on the side of I wanted to strike that.
Yeah.
So what we did was we recommended to the council, look, you guys, we could talk about this for the next 6 months.
Right.
And we're a hung jury on it. So we're going to recommend that you look at this.
Yeah.
But we don't have a solution. You have to come up with a solution to it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, but it was a case where, we felt something was important, and the council needed to look at it, and I don't know what happened there. I'm trying to think of what chapter that was, but we just said, we tried, we voted, we can't, but everybody agreed on its importance.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of where we fell on that. So I think that it wasn't always smooth. We didn't always come up with the best recommendations, but it was always honest. It was always respectful debate. And I want to say nobody on this task force was hoofing it. I probably did. This is just me personally.
Yeah.
I probably did 15 hours of prep work for every monthly meeting.
Really?
Which is far more than any other task force or commission would ever do.
Absolutely.
Even when I was on the planning commission, I maybe did an hour or two. Sometimes I would drive out to a site and look if like a conditional use permit was being asked for or something, because I like to look at something.
Yeah.
You get a map and a packet all in black and white and it looks like crap, and you don't really understand what you're voting on. But I can tell you with this, I mean, it was a lot of reading, it was a lot of rereading, it was a lot of thinking about what should this say, or what should there be a limit on this? Is this the right amount? So nobody on this took this as I'm just going to show up once a month and vote yes on everything or whatever.
That's good.
I can assure you this task force did not have that attitude.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, I stress this to the citizens of Crystal. Nobody steered, including Ann and Troy, never told me as the chair what to do, how to do it. They made suggestions, but as the chair, I kind of did what I wanted. Sorry, but the truth.
Yeah.
And we were never steered. All the recommendations, all the changes came from your fellow residents who all have to live under this code and all have to comply with it. So I think that's important to note that we were not, like I said before, we were not led by the nose like we were a herd of cattle.
Right.
So,
No, and I think that that's good. I think that the people who live in an area should be able to decide what kind of city they want to live in. I mean, if you have a bunch of people that want to live in a virtual prison, I guess that's their deal, and they can decide that. And granted, you elect people to make those decisions for you. We're a representative republic. We're not a straight democracy, but there's a democratic process. And I think when you're at the local level and we talk about government, being the strongest where it's closest to you, I think that is because of the level of involvement of people at the local level.
We hope.
And it should be. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. And when you look at things like that, people who live in a city know best how to handle the city stuff. And there are so many ordinances that come from these professional groups, from national and international special interests. Did you get into any of that?
Yes, but most of that was later in the code, which I wasn't a part of.
Right.
You definitely saw the fingerprints of that stuff. I mean, you'd have to be somebody like me or you that knows how to look for that.
Yeah.
I mean, you can, like I said before, you can tell what was written in plain English and what was written by a lawyer somewhere for the APA. I mean, you could see that coming a little bit. But I can tell you that, whole areas of the code were X'd.
Yeah.
And I honestly can't think of a time. I can think of one time on the Planning Commission where John Sutter, our city planner, who's now the community development director, brought it to us. And
Really?
He suggested that we X a bunch of it.
Wow. So everybody was getting involved.
Yeah, this is before the City Code Task Force. But John was pretty proactive. He lives in Crystal, so I think he gets some of that, and he's been promoted since then.
Right.
But I'm trying to remember what that was. It was something about some sort of zoning maximum or something like that, and it was height of a building or something like that, and we got to thinking, well, do we really need maximums here, or why don't we let the free market, if a maximum is reached, it needs to be looked at anyway because of zoning law,
right?
So you don't have to have the maximum in there. So that was a suggestion. I remember there was one section in the code, and I'm trying to think of what chapter it was, all about hospitals. And I made the point, well, we don't have hospitals in Crystal, so why is this here?
Well, we may someday.
Well,
but
again,
it was hospitals. It wasn't like clinics, right?
But again, yes. And again, you deal with that with zoning.
Yeah.
When they come in and apply for a permit,
right,
they go through that process anyway. So you don't need that specified in the code. And if something is there, they can always apply for a conditional use permit.
Yeah.
And that was another thing, too. We have a lot of conditional use permits in issue A.
Right.
Okay, well, isn't that maybe a signal that there's something wrong with our code? I mean, if we're approving CUPs, why don't we just change the code so that they don't need a CUP anymore?
Exactly.
So there were those types of things too that I wish I would have gotten to things like private kennel licenses, which I didn't get to either because I only went through chapter 6.
I think that's crazy in some aspects. It's like, what was the limit? Like 3? If you have 3 dogs, you need to have a private kennel license. There's 2?
It's how they defined pets.
Okay.
It's not just dogs and cats.
Right.
It's something. 3 was a private kennel license. 5 was the maximum. Now, I don't know what that all entailed.
Right.
If you have 3 cats and they never leave your house, I don't get what you need a license for.
Now, granted, nobody wants the cat lady living next door that that has like 15 to 25 cats. And
You don't want to live next to somebody with 25 dogs. There can be a reasonable limitation, but again, I come back to, why am I paying the city? What are they coming out here looking for? I've already bought these pets. I've already taking care of these pets.
Yeah.
If I have 4 kids, you don't come out and get a permit for that. I mean,
Yeah.
you
just wait.
Yeah. But, and again, those were laws that were not looked at, not thought about.
Yeah.
That's just the rule, and that's the way it's always been.
Yeah.
And that, again, from the old council was the attitude.
Right.
The chicken ordinance was another. Now, they did that before the city code task force. It's something we would have taken up.
Yeah.
But again, how do you arrive at a maximum? How do you, how do you do the details? And those details can change over time.
Yeah.
So, you have to be open to that. And I think, so it was, for me as the chair, I focused more on my duties as that. There were certain things that I pushed and tried to get rid of and was successful at it. Mm-hmm. There were some things, like I said, with the liaison where I can't remember what we recommended. We did recommend some clarification to the job, but not. I don't think we did not recommend to eliminate them.
Were you in on the building codes?
In the beginning, but okay. I did not see it through.
Because I know Crystal, and I don't know if it's like this anymore.
Chapter 5, I want to say that was. 6. Doesn't matter, but.
Yeah, no. It is chapter 4.
Okay, then I was through on that one.
Crystal, for a time.
But I want to say something, too. One of the problems with the code, not all of that was in Chapter 4.
Right.
Okay, you had 5, 6, and 7 that had some aspects of that.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things we pointed out, was that all the building stuff was not in one place. So
boy.
You could read Chapter 4, and it was 70% of what you needed to know.
Yeah.
And other things were sprinkled throughout some of the other chapters.
Wow, that's terrible. But Crystal, I know, for a while at least, and maybe this has been corrected now, got a lot of their building code from the International Building Code from the International Code Council rather than writing their own. Mm-hmm. Can you speak to that?
I can. One of the problems with that is some of those have been adopted in state statute.
Right.
Which I didn't know. But Troy, our attorney, knew that.
Right.
They created, what happened was, the International Building Code came in and made, as an NGO.
Yes, and that's what it is. It's an NGO.
Recommendations.
Through the UN, yes.
That the state of Minnesota made requirements.
Mm-hmm.
The connection to those two things isn't always made. So some of our codes that look like they were from the International had to comply with state statute. Because it was something that I pushed.
Yeah.
But our attorney pointed out to me, which I didn't know, that, okay, I understand what you're saying, but these 10 things, the state of Minnesota has passed laws saying you have to do.
So there were some changes, because it seemed to me like there was a link to the International Building Codes out of the ordinance page on the website for a while, wasn't there?
There might be, but I don't recall that.
Yeah.
So either that's gone or that's something that
could be.
With the adoption of state statutes no longer had to be there. But I do know that a good chunk of that was actually passed into law.
Yeah, I see it here. The following chapters of Minnesota rules, together with the most current version of the specific code adopted therein, are adopted by reference. And the where'd it go? I just thought, adoption of the International Residential Code, which is something else. That's 1309. 1305 is adoption of the International Building Code.
Yeah, a lot of those laws, though, are now state laws.
Because you have the administration of the Minnesota Building Code in 1300.
Yeah, they're pretty much lockstep. I mean, put it to you this way, too. Everything isn't a requirement, but the things we looked into, we found out we didn't have any choice over. So, unfortunately, the state has come in and demanded that those statutes be placed.
Yeah.
And city law can't contradict that. So, I mean, and I shouldn't say this because this is going to sound like I'm encouraging law breaking.
Yeah.
But tacitly, how much of that is actually enforced is questionable. I'll give you a better example.
Okay.
You know about the vaping laws that would have never passed the Crystal City Council.
Right.
But Hennepin County passed them.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you, I shouldn't say this, but I pretty much can tell you that is not being enforced in the city.
Yeah.
And even the police don't want it enforced. I
Yeah.
know Stephanie doesn't want to deal with it. And I think the city has adopted the attitude of, well, if the county passes it, the county can enforce it. Which is technically, constitutional sheriff, that's what you should have.
Right.
So,
it's a county law.
Right. So, but I think cities have gone in, I know some of them have, and written that into their statutes, but they don't have to do.
Right.
They don't have to do that. So it is kind of a tacitly, how much that's enforced is questionable. I mean, like for us, we have to write in these things in the building codes.
Yeah.
Whether we're out there fining people or enforcing that is secondary.
Yeah.
Which may sound like I'm contradicting myself, but again, if the state wants to pass laws, ultimately it isn't up to the city of Crystal to enforce that.
Right.
If you really want to be honest about it, it's not. So, yes, those things are written in. I don't know that they're being adhered to, though.
That's good. I mean, I think that there should be some of that.
Well, again, when you're not given a seat at the table to decide on, when you got somebody sitting in St. Paul who's gotten a memo from somebody at the UN of, well, this is what we're doing now, and you don't have a seat at the table, how else are you ever going to get your point across? Or if you just stand there and comply with everything they do, then they have incentive to keep doing it.
Yeah.
So if there's defiance on something, maybe the legislature looks at the law.
Right.
You know, if there's complaining about something, if there's lobbying for something, if there's, we're not going to do this. Come down here and arrest us.
Yeah.
Maybe the legislature takes a look at it. I think the worst thing you can do is just stand there and nod your head and do whatever they want. Now, it may have to be written in the code for legality purposes.
Right.
But, you know, and again, it sounds like I'm encouraging people to ignore the code. And that isn't really what I'm saying.
Right.
What I'm saying is, if you want things changed that you legally can't change, then you have to find some way to be defiant.
Right.
So,
well, and this goes back to what I said in the last podcast. Again, you want to make sure you listen to that one too if you haven't. But I talked about how important it is to find people to get elected to those local offices in the hopes that you have enough people then to go to the state level offices and change the state laws. Because then you're getting the local laws changed, you're getting the state laws changed, and you're doing it in a way that's going to be more permanent. So I think that that's a huge issue, you know, and I don't know how you feel about this. I mean, you mentioned, you know, we've all got those neighbors that, oh boy, but sometimes that neighbor isn't the one making a mess. Sometimes that neighbor is the one that is way over the top on making, you know, calling the police because somebody has a blade of grass that's longer than the other ones. Or I think I might have heard a dog once, you know, things like that. And I think that there needs to be some sort of neighborly nuisance law as well, where it's like if you call, it's, you know what it's like, it's like somebody who does a bunch of phony lawsuits, that there needs to be restitution. Well, I would say if you're crabby, you know, and you call the police out 3 times and there's no evidence that there's anything going on, then you're going to have to pay a fine. You get a misdemeanor, you know, and you pay a fine because it costs money to bring the police out there. That's taxpayer money that's being used for your pettiness. And so I'm not one for new laws, but this is one that I think that I could get behind, because you can't have those people out there that are like, I think that I might smell a fire from 12 blocks down the street.
Well, and you also can't get involved in two neighbors that hate each other.
Right.
And both want to out-code the other.
Yeah, when you get into
I don't
grumpy
like the
old
color
men.
of that guy's house. Yeah.
When you get into grumpy old men land, and it's you need to have a way to make them think twice before calling the police.
And you need to protect people's negative rights.
Yes.
I mean, that's the other part of that.
Yeah.
You have the right, if your house isn't pretty, you've got the right to do that. You don't have the right to let it fall apart.
Right.
But
until the point where it actually affects your property values, you have a right to do it.
Yes. You have the right to have the ugliest house on the block.
Yeah.
You have the right to the ugliest fence on the block.
Yeah.
You've got the right to have a half-dead tree in your front yard. I mean, there are things where it can get over the top. I don't know how big of a problem that is.
Yeah.
My guess is it's a small problem that can get big if there's no consequences to doing something. And I don't know how you'd arbitrate evidence, or I mean, I'm not sure, where you'd go with that specifically. But filing a false complaint, already is a misdemeanor.
So maybe they just need to enforce that law.
Possibly. But filing a false complaint is already a misdemeanor in the state of Minnesota. So I don't know if at the city code maybe you have to take it a step further, the way the charter can take the Minnesota Constitution a step further. I mean, to protect people's rights, I think that's an option to do. So, certainly something that cities should consider and take up. I think if I can say one more thing about it,
sure.
The total time this took was 2.5 years. I should just say that. Like I said, nobody was hoofing it. It was deliberate. It had to be that way.
Yeah.
And I personally can say that it was from somebody who wanted to look at this code 10 years ago and saw that it was actually done. I was Tuesday, the 19th of December. I was invited back to Crystal City Hall I never thought I'd go back again. And we all got awards for our roles, and not everybody was there from the commission or from the task force, but I was kind of tickled to be invited. I hadn't been on it for over a year, and I got to speak at it, and it was cool. And some of the comments that were made by the council was how they have, now I'm still a pessimist on this, how they have, people are learning about what we did in Crystal and are pondering implementing it in other places. I don't know where.
Well, they should.
And so I do think it'll be a slow process, but I think that this is an idea that's going to gain ground.
I think there's something that needs to be done in 853 cities, 87 counties.
I'll say 850 because I'm going to eliminate our three favorite.
Well, yeah. It needs to be done in our
It needs to be done, but it's not going to be.
No.
If it is done, it'll be done by, city staff. But it was encouraging to hear that. I didn't know that some council people had been approached by it. It's just a new, innovative thing. The city of Crystal will always be the epicenter of it.
That's what we set out to do.
Yeah, our city attorney had made the comment that he had never heard of a municipality in Minnesota doing this.
Of course not, because we're Community Solutions. We've been talking about this for years. And, some of our opponents like to say that we just complain and there aren't any solutions. Well, there's one that other people are looking to, so you can put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Well, there are those who just, can't deal with differing opinions and they're obsessed with being right.
Right, or new things can only come from the American Planning Association or the League of Minnesota Cities. Yeah,
I mean, that's a disease, I think, on local government. And so, but it was good to, it's good to see the results of it. It's good to see Again, the stuff coming from the citizens, it being debated, implemented, and gone through methodically, and it has to be.
It has to be.
You know,
you can't rush through that.
Yeah, I don't want the council passing things quickly with no debate, with no public input. That's a disservice too.
Yeah.
So, and they're not doing that. So, but the council deserves a lot of credit for doing this, sticking with it, letting it happen organically. And, the outreach task force is another thing they're doing, which I don't know a ton about.
Yeah.
Because it kind of happened on my way out of the city, but it's kind of becoming an all-encompassing thing. They had done the crystal ball, which they're going to do again next year.
Yeah.
They designed a new flag and logo for the city. They designed a new marketing to businesses and things. We got Pizza Ranch coming to where Old Country Buffet used to be.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I knew that.
I did not know that.
Really?
We're breaking news here on the Community Solutions Podcast.
Pizza Ranch is going where Old Country Buffet used to be. So,
that's a tasty pizza right there.
I agree. When I lived in Champlin, I lived right by one. They're very good.
Oh.
So, but that was another task force finding its way. I know a few people on it.
Yeah.
So, but it's another new, innovative, different way of doing things. In fact, the outreach task force is going to become a commission.
Really?
There is language to actually put it in the city code, replacing the Human Rights Commission, and that is going to be taken out. And the outreach task force is now going to be a permanent.
Wow.
Commission. So, because I think it was designed to do some short-term things.
Yeah.
But I think the people there have a lot of ideas and a lot of...
Which is great. I mean, the citizens should be the source of the ideas for any city.
Yeah, but I also think they do need some direction. I don't want it to become the Human Rights Commission.
Right.
I mean direction as not what is the outcome.
Right.
But here's what we'd like you to take up.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you to do it. We're not going to tell you what the outcome should be. But I think a commission without direction veers off into problematic things.
Yeah.
But I think there needs to be a little bit of a balance there. But I think it's just... It's so much better than it was. It's so much better than having a commission of 3 people, where 2 of them are sitting there watching Survivor on their phone. I mean, it's just so much of a difference now. And the people doing it seem to be excited about the work. And I think it's a great thing for the city. And I'm going to may even attend the Crystal Ball this year. I'll see what my wife says.
Really?
Couldn't go last year, and I got a lot of flack for it. So.
Yeah, I know that you were in demand.
I don't know why anybody wanted to see me. They wanted to see me with a mask, I guess. It was a masquerade ball last year, so maybe they all wanted to see me covered up. I don't know. That's okay,
maybe the truth right there.
But yeah, just look for this. I'm just hoping this idea goes somewhere. And I think it's something that we can start touting as a solution to run candidates on. Mm-hmm. That, hey, look what this city's done, and they've done the work that nobody else has. We need one of these in our city.
Yep.
I think it would be, if you're somebody who wants to reduce laws and clarify laws and strike things that are stupid or that don't make sense, you don't have to wait for Congress to do something.
Right.
Right here is where something like that can be created.
And I'm going to go on the Community Solutions podcast right now, and I'm gonna say this. I'm going to set the tone.
You are on it right now.
I am. I'm on it weekly. For those of you that didn't know, that this should not be a one-time exercise in a city. That probably every 10 years, you should have this commission go through the city code just to look at the laws that have been created, look at the laws that may have become outdated as things change, as your city changes, as zoning laws progress. And I think that, by having different people on, you may get a different sample of what, some people find onerous versus others. And you,
right. And remember, residents change.
Yeah.
People move out, people come back in. I could do this in one city. Why can't I do it here?
Yeah.
There's differences of opinion. It even is something that could just be a permanent commission.
It could be.
It doesn't have to be a one-time thing. Again, that's all innovative and out there.
Yeah.
I hope it's not a one-time thing. It's also something that some commissions in some cities are already set up to do if they want to.
Yeah.
You look at something like in New Hope, our favorite city now.
Oh, boy.
But they have the I can't remember what it's called, but they have like an all-encompassing commission. I don't know. I don't remember. It's Citizens Advisory Board.
Yes, that's it.
Why isn't that something they shouldn't take up?
They could.
They could take up the city code and add it to whatever they're doing, and you wouldn't even have, or you could create a task force to do what Crystal did, and then the Citizens Advisory Board could take it up after that and make small changes as you go. So I think that there's opportunity to do that everywhere, and if you got a commission sitting around doing nothing, which every city probably does, I hate to say, then it's time to get one doing something.
Yeah, get those slackers over on the Environmental Quality Commission to start doing something.
Well,
no.
I'll say this much. Environmental quality can be a good thing.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a joke.
I know what the joke is.
Well...
But, again, that's a commission, I think, if you want to be specific to Crystal, that has lacked direction, lacked purpose.
Lacked leadership,
and been about one person's agenda, and needs, a little dressing. It needs, what are you doing and why, and is there more we can do with this? Because it's strange because you have a park board that deals with some of the environmental issues already. Do they kind of do like a song and dance? Also, is what's being taken up. For example, could you create a Citizens Advisory Board in Crystal, eliminate the EQC, have the park board take up what they do, or have a Citizens Advisory Board take up any other issue?
Yeah.
Because I know that's been talked about. I don't know. With the Human Rights Commission, it went forward. The EQC, it didn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that people want to revise. But I'm one that says that commission is not something that I don't want to disparage the people on it because it's not my point. My point is I don't want 8 out of 12 meetings canceled because you have nothing to do. I don't want to talk about a tech dump for a year and a half.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about somebody's composting agenda. There needs to be a purpose and a real agenda, and it needs to that needs to come from the council. What they do with it is the commission's thing. But again, is there something bigger they can be doing? If you make it about just environmental quality, are there issues we're missing that another commission isn't taking off?
Right.
So, my 2 cents. You know how I'd vote.
So there you go.
Be there to do it, but you know how I'd vote.
There you go, Minnesota. Wow, the City Code Task Force. There's an idea for your city. There are 852 cities left that do not have a City Code Task Force in Minnesota. So I think it's time that you get the wheels in motion in your city. If you would like help understanding how we put that into motion, how you might be able to put that into motion into your city, feel free to get a hold of us. If you want us to come and speak to a group, we do keynotes all the time, keynotes and Q&A sessions. Get a hold of us as well if you want to get a hold of the tip line and let us know what's going in your area. That can all be done at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. Hit us up there. Hit us up on social media. We're all over the place. Again, I know we said it last time. You can find this podcast and share it at the iTunes Store, at Google Play Store, on Spotify, or at podbabble.com. So we appreciate you in advance doing that, because it only will help your city. I mean, we're just here as a resource to help you guys. And so that's why we do this, put this out every week. It's for you. So make the most out of it. Anything else, Andrew, before I let him go? Any parting words?
We covered it all.
All right.
As always, you have the parting words down pat.
All right. Well, that's it, folks. You've heard our story. We've built a case. Now it's all up to you. That's the beauty of it. We wrap it up. We present it like a gift, and here it is. It's yours. So we love you, Minnesota. Now it's your turn to get to work.
If I get too